tweak the screen as well. So how are you finding The Guardian? Have you been there long?
Over a year.
Is The Guardian a mad house or is it better than BBC?
I enjoy both.
So are you a side local then? You might not print stories you don't want, but Georgia will go on. Yeah, I know, I've got a bunch of people. Georgia, you know, I speak to Guardian, you know. I mean, I'll tell her not whether to print stuff or not, or anything that's printed. No scruples, no morals, no. Oh, you did, Georgia, I didn't see that. I just thought you don't for the print. Mingling with the press. So, do you live in here?
Terrific. Morning, everybody. Morning. Right, here we go.
Right.
Up you go, Rob. Yep. Pass those down.
We're going to take out our old Rachel Reeves once more.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Good. And there we have it.
Well done.
The reform rate.
Job well done. Fantastic. Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good
Right.
picture.
Very good.
Okay. Down you come, Rob. Okay. Right. Off we go.
Okay.
Well, good morning, everybody. And I tell you what, isn't Jenrick good at that? I mean, he
I found my role in life.
Well, I think this is probably it. Absolutely. No, I mean, we obviously are campaigning very, very hard. There are two issues here. One is the price of crude oil, but the other, of course, is the levy. And the way we sneakily do tax in this country means there's about 6p going on a litre of petrol staged over the course of the next few months. And this is just about the last time this should happen. The cost of living is really impacting. And part of the problem is that these taxes are put on by politicians who don't fill up their own cars or who ride bicycles in North London. A total lack of understanding, particularly for those that need their cars, their vans for work. And while we're at it, how are we going to pay? How are we going to pay for not increasing taxes? Well, we're going to get rid of lunatic green levies. In particular, I'm thinking about heat pump subsidies. I could take you to Jaywick, in my constituency, where a couple of £1 million of public money was spent putting heat pumps on houses on the front that are wooden constructs. And you know what? The heat pumps don't work at all. The same will apply to any levies, any subsidies going towards EVs. And while we're at it, the Energy Profits Levy, even the Financial Times today, suggesting that if that was removed, an extra $50 billion worth of investment would go into the North Sea, with all of the jobs that go with it. And when the government argue that, well, it wouldn't make any difference if we produced our own oil and gas in Britain, oh yes it would. Those companies would employ people, those companies would pay tax, and whilst oil may be a global market, gas is not. Gas is not. And I met, over the weekend, I met with the US administration, particularly in the energy sector, and they were explaining to me that even within America, gas prices change. So there are massive opportunities here, and yet the country is down to 2 days' supply of gas. If we get a windless April, the lights could go out in large parts of Britain. So whichever way you look at this, all the way through, from taxing the motorist, from taxing the commercial vehicle, through to being self-sufficient as much as we can in oil and gas, the idiotic policies started by the Conservatives are now being made even worse by Ed Miliband and Rachel Reeves are hurting ordinary people. Rob?
Yeah, well, Nigel, we're here in Derbyshire to send a very strong message to Rachel Reeves that we want her to postpone, to cancel the increase in fuel duty that she has planned for later this year. I've asked her twice now in the House of Commons in the last week, and she has refused to do that. People are hard up across the country at the moment. They see the cost of groceries in the supermarkets going up, their energy bills going through the roof, and the cost of filling up at the pump getting higher and higher. They were going to be feeling that before the war, they're sadly going to feel it after the war. This is the worst possible moment for Rachel Reeves to be hiking fuel duty. So what we're saying is we're going to fight it every step of the way. We're going to put as much pressure as we possibly can on her to U-turn, and for this to be the 18th,
Well, they're quite good at U-turning, aren't they? So you never know.
And if she doesn't do it, we're being very clear that if there's a reform government, our first budget will bring down the cost of fuel by taking at least 5p off the cost of fuel every time you fill up. And just to underline the point that Nigel made, we were very clear a few weeks ago that we're going to be careful with your money. We're not going to say that we're going to reduce taxes without explaining where it's going to come from. And so today we're announcing £13 billion of savings from Ed Miliband's department, scrapping a lot of the net zero madness that is impoverishing people, deindustrialising our country right now. 3 things in particular. We're going to get rid of the grants for heat pumps. They're 3 times more expensive than a normal boiler. They're more expensive to run. They're not popular. They're £7,500 of grants. And would you believe it? More than half of the grants are going to households that earn more than £52,000 a year. So some of the lowest earning people in the country are paying for better off people to have them. Secondly, we're going to get rid of the billions of pounds that Ed Miliband wants to spend on carbon capture and storage. Remember, we're only 0.8% of the world's emissions, and this technology, which is unproven, may not even work, is going to take out 1% of 0.8%. And that will save us tens of billions of pounds in the years ahead. And lastly, we're announcing today that we're going to scrap the grant that goes for new electric vehicles. We're not going to ban people from buying petrol and diesel cars. You can buy whatever car you want under a reform government, and we're going to save billions of pounds by doing that. And all of that money is going to help us to manage the public finances more responsibly and bring down people's bills and cut their taxes. This is just the beginning of the work that we're going to be doing in the weeks and months ahead to bear down on the cost of living, to lighten the load on people across the country who are finding life incredibly difficult at the moment. Reform is on your side, and a reform government is going to bring down your bills.
Yep, and thank you to our host today. Cheapest fuel in the country. Come on, roll up, roll up. Well done, Rob.
Well done.
So we'll do a huddle over. What's the photograph?
No, I was going to put you on it. Right. So yeah, face me. Guys, come back to me. I'll get the shot and I'll get other ones. Robert, just take one step back.
the souls in.
I'm just jumping to get that shot once these guys are done. Nigel, we're going to do a Q&A on that.
Yes, no, fine. Is everyone going to come up?
Hello. Hi, Nigel.
Good morning.
Robert. Good morning, Beth Rigby from Sky News. I've got two questions, if I may. The first one is that the country is clearly racked with anxiety over the Iran war, and Reform can't get a consistent position. Robert, you said you didn't think it was necessary for the UK to join the bombing, but Nigel, you said we should do all we can to support US military action. Richard Tice said Reform would use the RAF to bomb Iran, and Andrew Jenkins says don't rule anything out. Keeping British people safe and secure is any government's #1 priority. But if you can't even agree a position amongst the leadership, how do you expect people to trust your national security?
Well, I tell you what, given that we can't even send a Royal Naval vessel to defend British sovereign territory at an RAF base, we certainly don't have the capability to offer anything of any value to the Americans or the Israelis. So defending the base, recognising the catastrophe that is now the Royal Navy, and by the way, President Macron is really, frankly, showing the humiliating state that we've sunk to today with his very decisive actions and his intention to help clear the Straits of Hormuz. And the other point is protecting British citizens. I think so far the government have hired one charter plane, and even that broke down and was 24 hours late. So yes, we should never, ever, ever have said no to the Americans using the bases, particularly Diego Garcia. And interestingly, Mauritius have been very, very clear they would not have allowed that base to be used at all. So there are differing opinions as to whether we should physically join the attacks. I, as leader, am saying to you, if we can't even defend Cyprus, let's not get ourselves involved in another foreign war.
My question then is, what is Reform's position? Because you two have said...
I've just told you what the position is. We cannot get involved directly in another foreign war. We don't have a navy. We can't even defend our own military base in Cyprus.
And just secondly, and thank you for answering that so comprehensively, you're pledging to cut fuel duty and pressing the government to do so, but you also pledged, or some of your candidates did, to cut council tax when they were trying to win elections at local level, and that's gone up. So how can anyone trust anything you say?
Wrong. Never once last year in the county campaign, including here in Derbyshire, did I ever say that we cut council tax.
Some of your candidates did, and they haven't. They've put it up.
No. Our literature...
I'll check what the people in Kent said, because they're putting it up.
You can listen if you want to, or we can jack it in now. It's entirely up to you. We sent out literature with national messaging, which said end net zero, appropriately, stop the boats and cut taxes. That was national messaging. On individual county messaging, we said nothing of the kind. Only one party last year campaigned in the locals saying they would cut council tax, and they're called the Conservative Party. In the 3 counties they won, they've increased council tax by 4.99% in every one. In 3 of the Reform-led councils, we've actually risen council tax less than the rate of inflation, which is effectively a cut. But never once. And I can assure you, I met all of our candidates. I travelled extensively around the country for a month. Never once did we promise we'd cut council tax. What we said is we'd cut expenditure, and we've made at least £300 million of savings already, and that is why our council tax rises are lower than the other parties. Thank you.
Hi
Hi there, it's George Roberts from the BBC in the East Midlands. Nigel Farage, you've been supportive, made supportive noises of President Trump, American actions going into this war in Iran. You've come to a place today where a third of people in this constituency rely on oil to heat their homes. The President said that rising prices are a small price to pay for victory in Iran. People here have seen prices almost double, sometimes over that, to heat their homes. So is your message to them that that's a small price to pay? And also, just to follow up, on council tax, Reform are in control here. They have just put up council tax for people in Derbyshire by pretty much the maximum amount. Lots of people have told us that they're incredibly disappointed in that, particularly when it comes to pledges on the DOGE agenda, the efficiency agenda. There may not have been explicit pledges to cut council tax, but what there was a pledge to make things more efficient in order to bring bills down. They've not seen that. So what's your message to them? Thank you.
Well, across all the different councils, some have made bigger efficiencies than others. But, you know, when you go in, you don't know exactly what you're going to inherit. And also, you know, cutting things often can't be done overnight. So my message to the people of Derbyshire would be patient. We've managed it in other counties, and we will manage it here. In terms of some of these fuel debates are fascinating. You know, at 9 o'clock yesterday morning, the price of heating oil was very different to what it was at 6 o'clock yesterday evening. You might have noticed the spot price of crude rocketed to nearly $120 a barrel, came down to $84 a barrel. If the Straits of Hormuz are cleared, I accept that's an if the Straits of Hormuz are cleared, oil will be back into the low 80s and heating oil will be similar. But I get your point. Rural Britain feels under attack. Rural Britain needs cars. Rural Britain comes to petrol stations like this and they feel they're being hit in every single way. So we've got enormous sympathy for people in that position. You know, America and Israel were going to attack Iran, whatever we said or did. I think it was a massive mistake with our major NATO ally and with a country without which we're defenseless to initially prevent the Americans from using our bases. So in that way, I absolutely wanted us to be supportive. All we've seen from the Prime Minister is dither, U-turns, not knowing where he stands. And I can only guess it's because Morgan McSweeney is gone. There's no one telling him what to do. We're very, very clear that what this has highlighted to us is 14 years of running down our armed forces to the point at which the French are sending more naval vessels than we even possess. So there are some very big lessons for us to learn as a country. Thank you very much.
Just on heating oil, I was in the House of Commons yesterday when Rachel Reeves came to make a statement on the cost of living, and she had absolutely nothing to offer people at all on any of these challenges. And we're here today to send a very strong message to her on one of the things that people in rural Britain definitely care about, which is the cost of filling up. In Derbyshire, there'll be parents driving long distance to send their kids to school, care workers going house to house on big distances. I even heard somebody on the radio the other day who said that she wasn't able to do her chemotherapy treatment because she was worried about the cost of filling up. Well, we want Rachel Reeves to take one good step in the right direction and say she's not going to proceed with this hike in fuel duty. If she doesn't, then we're going to take action ourselves under Reform government. And just to back up what Nigel said on councils, look, these Reform councils have only been in office for 9 or 10 months, and already Reform councils are increasing taxes less than long-established Labour and Conservative councils. So I don't think that's a bad start at all, actually. They have found savings. They are managing councils, on average, more efficiently than others elsewhere in the country, and I'm sure there'll be more to come in the years ahead.
Will Godley, GB News. If I could ask two questions, if that's okay. Firstly, to you, Mr. Farage. We're here because you're tackling the cost of rising fuel prices that have been rising as a result of the war in Iran, the war that you've been very supportive of, despite the fact we saw yesterday YouGov polling suggesting the majority of Brits oppose what's happening in the Middle East. So how can the British people today really believe you when you say reforms on their side, when you're supporting a war pushing up the price of petrol? And if I could ask Mr. Jenrick a question, the last time oil prices were as high as they are, Liz Truss was in government, you were in her government, and they introduced the energy price guarantee. Is that something a reform government would introduce, or can you rule that out today?
Yeah, whether we have wars in Ukraine, whether we have the Americans and the Israelis attacking Iran, are events way beyond our control. Way beyond our control. What is within our control is to produce the oil and gas that we need in this country, not to be reliant upon it coming in from the rest of the world, not to subsidise renewables, to give us the most expensive industrial energy prices in the world, and consumers who've been paying almost a 20% premium on their annual electricity bills directly as a result of government policy, with no one telling them the truth. There are two issues here. One is the price of oil. We can't control that. What we're talking about is the duty that government puts on top. And it's gone far enough. And the stealth rises that are planned by Reeves, nearly 6p over the course of the next 8 months, we are saying, hard up Britain, cost of living crisis Britain, cannot afford it, and we're going to campaign hard from this day for the Chancellor to drop that. And you know what? We won a big victory against the government last month. We've won 4.6 million people the right to vote on May the 7th, and we'll win this battle too.
Very good. Well, look, we don't know how long this war is going to last. We want it to end as soon as possible. Nigel's been very clear on that. It is making people harder up here in our own country, and that's what matters to us. Reform is a party for working people, and our first duty and priority is to them. Look, we've given our marching orders to Rachel Reeves. She could come to Parliament, say she's not hiking fuel duty. We said scrap these green levies and taxes to make it cheaper, and do the sensible thing, end the net zero madness by stopping the ban on North Sea oil and gas. That's what she needs to tell Ed Miliband. Those are good things that she could start by doing. If we need to do more, well, let's see what happens in the future. But people can know one thing about this Reform Party. It's that we're always going to be on the side of working people, and we're going to be doing everything we can to bring their bills down in the months ahead.
One thing I will promise you, and the whole of Westminster will disagree with this, because they don't understand it. Well, to be frank, they don't understand very much. But if we fracked onshore, if we developed the North Sea properly, if we developed our own gas, we would have much cheaper gas than so-called global markets. That is a myth that you hear from Labour, Liberal Democrat, the Conservatives. They don't understand the commodity markets. As I said, I was in America at the weekend, and I learned that actually gas is much cheaper in Texas than it is in Florida. Producing our own gas would reduce everybody's electricity bills significantly.
Richard Marsden, Daily Mail. Can I ask you both two questions, please? So, one, earlier on you mentioned, Mr Farage, about there will be no ban on petrol or diesel cars. So, do you mean there will be that the ban that's due to come in will entirely go, or do you mean it'll be delayed, as was the Conservatives' policy? Question number two, in relation to Iran, you obviously say we can't intervene naval-wise, we can't intervene in the air, but we could be asked, if America wanted, to intervene in terms of providing boots on the ground or special forces. Do you have any comment on whether a reform government would provide soldiers to help?
What soldiers? What soldiers? We haven't got any soldiers. We've run the army, the air force and the navy down to almost nothing. And it happened under 14 years of Conservative government, the party historically that you would have said actually stood up for armed forces and armed forces soldiers. And I was really shocked today to see that your newspaper and other newspapers revealed that now 242 former members of our special forces are under investigation as part of this witch hunt against British veterans. It is absolutely disgusting, and of course our Prime Minister, along with Phil Shiner, played his role in all of that. I think this must be the least patriotic government we've ever had in our lifetimes. So we don't have the soldiers anyway. Even if we did, I would say it's no to boots on the ground, all right? We've done more than enough in Afghanistan, in Iraq, over the years. I do believe that the Americans and the Israelis will succeed in completely removing the nuclear threat from this very, very dangerous regime. And you know something? If they achieve that, that'll be a very, very good thing for the world, in my view.
Very good. And on the electric vehicle mandate, Richard Tice did a speech in Birmingham a few weeks ago, you may have seen that, where he was very clear that we're going to scrap the mandate.
Completely.
Completely. And Richard, incidentally, was way ahead of this issue when it was fashionable to be parroting this. He was saying that it was crazy. It's incredibly harmful to our economy and to car manufacturers here in the UK. So we're going to scrap it entirely. And that's why we don't need these very expensive electric vehicle grants, which are going to cost us billions of pounds in the years ahead. And you know what? Of the 40 cars that are eligible to be bought on the electric vehicle grant, only one is assembled in the UK. So billions of pounds are being spent to prop up car manufacturers elsewhere in the world. Middle-class jobs in the UK being lost for middle-class jobs in the likes of China. That is what reform is going to bring an end to, the net zero madness, and enable people just to buy whatever car they want. The war on the motorist will be over.
Yeah, and it is the Conservative Party that started it. So when Kemi gets up with the dispatch box and she says, isn't this terrible? All these jobs at Luton were lost this morning because of your EV mandates. And all Starmer can say is, no, they were your EV mandates. A collective madness came over the political class, and we're going to end that. Sir.
Good morning, George Ike from LBC. First of all, if I can ask you, is this policy really about reducing the cost of fuel to be on the side of alarm clock Britain, as you put it, or is it actually about rolling back on climate policies and green pledges? And secondly, President Trump has threatened Iran with death, fire and fury if they stop the flow of oil, and they'd be hit 20 times harder than they have been yet. Would a reform government agree with that stance?
We have to have the Straits of Hormuz opened. It can be done. There's going to be I believe what will happen. We did it in 1917 quite successfully with the convoy system. This, of course, is much more sophisticated because, you know, Iran have got ballistic missiles. Provided they can take out the midget submarine threat, I believe we will get oil flowing through Hormuz and get it flowing pretty quickly. And yes, we saw a sharp spike overnight in the oil price, but by the end of the day, it had fallen significantly. The answer to your question is very simple. The way we pay for this, and the way we pay for other tax cuts, is by getting rid of a ruinous climate agenda. The net zero department, going to cost us tens of billions, as Rob laid out a moment ago, over the next few years. We are going to get rid of that. We're going to start producing our own gas. We're going to have cheaper electricity and give this country a chance to begin reindustrialization. You know, we've reduced carbon emissions more than any other Western country, 50% since 1990. But we haven't really. We've closed down steel plants. We've closed down refining. We've closed down plastics. We've closed down chemicals. We've closed down cement making, bricklaying making. It's all gone to India and the other side of the world. And then guess what? The products all get shipped back here. All we've done is to export CO2 production. It's lunacy.
And look, we said a few weeks ago that we're going to be careful with your money. We're not going to make promises on tax and spend without having very carefully thought them through. We've seen where that goes in the past. We saw that with Liz Truss and the mini budget. Rachel Reeves, before the general election, said 6 billion of tax rises. It's now 68 or 70 billion and rising. More to come, no doubt, in the autumn. The Reform government isn't going to behave like that. We're going to stop all this waste, spraying around money on things that don't matter to working people in this country. And Ed Miliband is the worst offender. So we're going to stop the madness on net zero and use that money to do what you, the British people, actually want. Bring down your bills, bring down your taxes.
Hello. John Walker from The Express. Nigel, President Trump has said that he thinks this war could be over soon. It's hard to know sometimes what the President is planning to do, but would you urge him to declare victory and end this war soon? And Robert, can I ask you a question about the car industry? You'll know that British-based car makers have been encouraged by this government to switch to electric cars, and they've had also. The problem is that people don't want to buy them, which is why the government's introducing subsidies. But if you change policy now, it's going to cause them some problems. Are you going to offer them any help and support to switch their strategies back again?
Well, if I could perhaps answer that. Well, firstly, the British car manufacturing industry is on its knees right now because it's got incredibly expensive industrial energy prices, 3, 4, 5 times higher than the United States, because we're seeing thousands of electric vehicles and other cars imported from China. We're one of the few countries that doesn't have any tariffs in that respect. We want to help those industries, and we're going to do it by encouraging people to buy British. How crazy is it that the Motability scheme, whereby the taxpayer funds thousands and thousands of cars, so many of them are coming from China. They're not assembled in the UK. Let's make sure those cars are actually assembled in the UK. So we're going to back the British car manufacturing industry, but we're going to allow free market. People can choose what car they want. We're not going to create a false market where people have been given grants of 3,750 quid to buy a car that they might not actually want. And people on low incomes, invariably, are the ones who are paying that, so people who can afford it can go and buy the car that they want. That's not right.
We all want the war over quickly, including President Trump. Politically, it's vital for him that it's over pretty quickly. But having started it, Israel and America having started it, they must remove the nuclear threat. If they don't do that, they will have failed.
Yeah, Daniel Martin from the Daily Telegraph. Can you just clear up? There's some reports in the FT that that your relationship with President Trump has cooled a bit because you didn't meet him at Mar-a-Lago last week.
Do you know what? Journalists speculate about all sorts of things, and I wouldn't want to rob you of a living, so you can go on speculating about my relationship with President Trump. That's just fine. You know, look, he's a friend of mine. I agree with many things that he does. I don't agree with other things that he does. His style is not to the liking of many British people, but we should recognise we're lucky to have an American president that actually likes us. And I think Ed Davies' idea that the King should cancel the visit to America is a really immature and stupid idea. We've had our ups and downs with America over the years. We'll have them in the years to come. My worry right now is that America as a whole is losing respect for us. And frankly, if it's going to take 2 weeks for HMS Dragon to get to Cyprus, I think the rest of the world is losing respect for us. So it's about time we started respecting ourselves, getting a government that was patriotic, put our British forces first, ended this witch hunt against ex-servicemen, make sure our veterans aren't sleeping rough on the streets, whilst young men who come by dinghy are put in 4-star hotels, and a complete change of approach. That's what we're calling for. Thank you.
Neha Gohil from The Guardian. I have 2 questions. First of all, Farage, the war in Iran will impact the bills of millions across the UK. Members of your party have said the UK should join the bombing. How will you be able to help British people dealing with increasing bills when you are backing the war? And to Jenrick, you talk about net zero madness, but you previously supported net zero under the Conservatives. Why have you changed your mind?
Look, the point about this is, we didn't start the war. We didn't start the Ukraine war. We didn't start this war. There are events that happen in the world that are beyond our control. But what we can do is to make sure we're in a position to withstand shocks. For a country to be down to 2 days of gas supplies shows incompetence on a level that is absolutely astonishing. And let me tell you something. If this time next week the Straits of Hormuz are flowing freely, the oil price will be back to where it was before the war started.
And as regards net zero, well, I think I was the second, after Jacob Rees-Mogg in the Conservative Party, to say that net zero 2050 was a complete fantasy, was never going to be achieved, that it was impoverishing our country and deindustrialising what little remains of our heavy industry right now. It was a terrible mistake. Putting that into law without even a vote in Parliament. I mean, there was more of a debate on banning plastic straws than there was on the biggest change to our economy since the Industrial Revolution. It was a huge mistake, and all of us who are involved in that should appreciate it. What we've got to do now is move forward and have a sensible policy as a country, and that's what we're going to do with the Reform government.
Yes, and you know, Reform are very willing to accept sinners that repent of their previous ills. And with that, we'll end the press conference. Thank you.
Thank you.